Monday, March 4th, 2024, Daily Bread. Jesus' heart for the 5,000. John chapter 6, verses 1 through 15, key verse 5. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" Jesus feeds the 5,000. Sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is, the Sea of Tiberias. And a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, "It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for one to have a bite." Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish, but how far will they go among so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over, let nothing be wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. After the people saw the sign that Jesus performed, they began to say, "Surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world." Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. Daily Bread. First, Jesus' compassion for the crowd. A huge crowd, made up of thousands of people, followed Jesus and the disciples as they traveled. It must have been kind of tiresome after a while. But with a shepherd's heart, Jesus was intent to feed their hungry hearts with his words, and their hungry stomachs with lunch. Do you have a shepherd's heart to make yourself available to meet the needs of others? Even when you're busy, tired, or just don't feel like it? There is a world full of hurting people who need a shepherd. They need the gospel. Jesus calls each of us to be his hands and reach out to them in his name. They could be your coworkers, your classmates, family, or even your friends. The true test of whether we know Jesus' compassion is if we extend it to others. Second, Philip's pessimism versus Andrew's resourcefulness. In this passage, we see 2 very different attitudes toward the same situation. When Jesus asked how they could buy bread to feed everyone, Philip said, "It would cost way too much." But Andrew looked around and thought, "Well, there's a boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish. Which person are you more like when faced with a problem? Do you tend to respond negatively or positively? Andrew wasn't naive. He wondered how far the boy's lunch could go. But he was willing to bring the option to Jesus. We don't need to have blind optimism when facing problems, but we can look around and see what we can do. We can give God our 5 loaves and 2 fish. Maybe it's our time, our heart, energy, talents, and resources to be used by him. God can do amazing things when we give him what we have by faith. Prayer. Lord, help me to learn Jesus' shepherd's heart and be ready to serve others anytime, not only when it's convenient for me. Teach me to recognize opportunities where I can serve, give, and love in your name so others can know you too. One word, give God my 5 loaves and 2 fish.